All right. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the CRMCOE roundtable. Today, we have an exciting topic, CRM security. And as you know, security it's always an issue. It's not something in 2021 we are talking about. Ever since the computer was invented, we've been talking about information stored on the computer. We've been talking about the security. So today we will be discussing CRM security. We have an excellent panel, people who have been there, done it, they understand the security piece of it. And so we have three great speakers or panelists. They will be sharing their experience about the security. So we have Sid Bhadani, Carl, Dan, and myself as a moderator. So let me get started with my background. My name is Velu Palani. I work for HCSC Corporation, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois, Texas, Montana, New Mexico, and Oklahoma. And I also run the CRMCOE. It's a community-driven project. So every month we get together and share CRMCOE expertise. And I would like to get started with Sid. Sid, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Velu. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank you, everyone, for joining us for this session. I'm Sid Bhadani. I'm a senior cybersecurity architect, currently working at CSC, Healthcare Service Corporation, with 20 plus years of experience in technology across telecom, finance, healthcare, and product-based industries. I have helped organizations deliver business outcomes with usable security built in. I'm passionate in helping the organizations define and implement Zero Trust security, DevSecOps, and digital delivery strategy. One of the fun fact I would like to share about myself is I born in a very small town in the middle of a desert where, let alone the phones and internet connectivities, the water supply was even hard to get in months. And as Velu mentioned, I'm joined today with some of the finance minds in the industry. So I'll hand it over to you, Carl.
Thanks, Sid. So hi, everyone. My name is Carl Brundage. I'm a CTA in the Salesforce ecosystem, as well as MVP and Master Architect out of Seva. I spent a lot of time working with customers on data-related topics, data and analytics. So making sure you're approaching that with a security mindset is really important. I'm happy to share some experiences today. As far as a fun fact, believe it or not, I spent a lot of time on the ice, coaching hockey for my kids and others. I actually coach 2 teams and assistant coach 2 other teams. So when I'm not talking data and security, I'm probably on an ice rink somewhere. So I'll hand it over to Dan next to introduce.
I realized I was on mute. Thank you, Carl, and thank you for the wonderful introductions, both of you. Dan Pattangi, I lead enterprise architecture and transformation globally for TransUnion. As you know, we are in more than 64 countries out there. Some of the big things that we are focused on is trying to migrate everything to the cloud. And we are very cloud agnostic. We do have a large Salesforce present. We are thinking about AWS. The whole industry is moving towards Azure, AWS, Google. And while doing so, the first thing that comes to everybody's mind is, how can we do it securely, safely, and a repeatable rinse and repeat process where people can really sleep at night? And that's what we're going to talk about. I'm really glad to have this excellent panel. An interesting fact about me is I've recently embarked on a journey of food is medicine. We all take a lot of medicines in our life. Half of America takes medicines to do something or the other. I've recently learned a new technique of switching over to making your food and making sure your food acts as a medicine for you. That's a fun fact about me. Happy to share on that as well later.
Thank you, Dan. I think we should talk about CRMCOE with the food as a medicine. That's anybody who is working in the CRM space, how do you make food as your medicine? It's a good topic. We should think about that. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your experience. My experience is in short. I've been working with Salesforce for 21 years, June 13, 2000. That's a fun fact. You can think about me as nothing but, oh, what does this guy know anything about Salesforce? I still don't think that I'm grasping 100% of what's going on. I don't think I can claim everything about Salesforce. It's a huge ecosystem. But one thing I realized, Salesforce as an ecosystem, my experience in the last 20 years, I worked with small companies, large companies, and medium-sized companies. One thing is very paramount. The shift that I have learned as an experience, the shift is they talking about CRM, customer relationship, 10, 15 years ago. They implemented it. Now only I see the industry is really embracing the customer loyalty. I think the Salesforce ecosystem gives you that opportunity to implement the customer loyalty and the real value that companies should provide to the customer. I see that the ecosystem is working out, working really well. So, and I'm happy to be part of the ecosystem. Let's get started. And so today, we are having some very narrow, I wouldn't call it very focused discussion on the security. So we will talk quickly about the cloud security and the need for increased protection, and how do you prepare your organization, and what are the ways to secure and ongoing audit and support. So the topic, it's all about CRM security, but CRM, we are going to be specifically talk about the cloud CRM. We are not going to be talking anything on the on-prem. How do you secure your CRM on-prem? So it's all about cloud. So that's why the first thing would be the state of cloud security. So to get to the point, today let's talk about the state of cloud security. When you talk about cloud, we all know cloud is a big word. Sometimes I always think, are we really cloudy? When are we going to see the sun? That's how I feel it. Like too many people are in, everything is cloud, cloud, cloud. Within a cloud, there is a sub-cloud. And so all of them are there. So then everything is relying on the cloud platform to be, every time when you speak to a leader, an executive, they want to talk about how secure is this. To talk about the current state of the cloud security, I would like you, Sid, to, if you can speak to this particular topic and enlighten us with your experience and your knowledge in this space, the cloud security.
For sure. Well, thank you. So as you rightly said, right, a lot of people are moving to the cloud. And in my opinion, cloud itself is not less secure in any which way than your existing on-prem data center or your on-prem environment. In fact, I would say that cloud is probably inherently more secure. And in my experience, some of the cloud services, in fact, have better security built in than your on-prem environment, as you get benefited from the sheer scale which they have and the cloud sourcing knowledge which comes with it. So take any major cloud service provider, right? Whether it's Azure, whether it's AWS, whether it's Google, whether it's Salesforce, Workday, Oracle, right? They all spend a lot more money on building the security inside out in their platform than any of the individual organizations would do, right? So when I see that question, is the cloud secure? I generally ask them back, are we using the cloud more securely, right? Because security in the cloud is a shared model, right? Security of the cloud and security in the cloud. And in general, when an organization takes a journey to the cloud, right, whether we know it or whether they are saying we are moving our compute to cloud or application to cloud, at the end, you are moving your data to the cloud, right? And if you are actually moving to your data to the cloud, and if you know where your data is, right, have the right controls over its access, the confidentiality of it, have a single pane of glass giving you that visibility on all the actions being performed, I think you would get a better agility, time to market with the cloud, while having improved security posture than your on-prem environment. And the good news is that most of these cloud service providers, right, offer these foundational security capabilities out of the box, which can be employed quickly with a optimized configuration, which fits your organization's need. So any organization which is right now they're looking to get benefits out of the cloud, my first advice is generally make sure you build the robust approach to the cybersecurity to protect your sensitive data, because now you have started putting your data across the board, which is not bound to your on-prem or network-based security, right? Mm-hmm. One of the things which you have written, or here a point is what is the impact of the COVID-19, right? So with COVID-19, the way I see it is a lot of assumptions and barriers are broken, first of all, right? The biggest assumption of being in the physical office for 5 days a week seems to fade away. Like I would ask a question like, why do I need to be in office from 9 to 4 every day for 5 days, right? People are working from everywhere, accessing your resources from any device and location of their choice, right? And most of the current pattern, like where there are two ways to access the applications, right? When you're working from home, one, you ask your user to do a full tunnel VPN, and then you route them back from your on-prem environment to the cloud service, which is pretty expensive in terms of cost and the user experience, right? Mm-hmm. So another pattern which is coming out, and which is the DIA, direct internet access, right? And or you can say it's a new dimension of internet communication that is becoming vital. And I would not say that COVID has brought to the table. It was already in the progress, right? But it has certainly accelerated it, and which would bring the major shift in the way we implement cybersecurity without compromising the user experience. So I'll take a pause there and see, Carl, Dan, what's your viewpoint?
I tend to agree with a lot of the points that you said. And I know we have the big cloud providers on here, but I think it's also not limited to them. If you're a software company, a SaaS company, if you're providing services to customers in the cloud, look at who the customers are of those vendors. Because if they have the same type of enterprises that are putting things on Google or AWS, they have the same demands, and they're putting the same emphasis on securing the cloud as well. So the benefits aren't limited just to the big providers of having a secure cloud. Customers are demanding that. We see it from our customers that we need to have that same level that they would have if they're going to a Google or an AWS or Azure. Dan, what about you?
So great points from both of you. But I would like to add one more layer, right? Most of the cloud providers, the first thing you're always looking at is what is the cloud provider's out-of-the-box security posture. There's always a baseline, but they always have plenty of other features that you can tune on. So if I'm on AWS and somebody else is on AWS, they are not equally secure. It all depends on how much more have I fine-tuned and tweaked what I get, and have I loaded other things that I want on top of what that cloud provider gave me. So I would say that the state of cloud security is as you want it to be. It is dependent on your security posture. Cloud has a whole bunch of features, whole bunch of things you can do with it, but out of the box, you get the base features that may be great for one, but not great for somebody else. I would highly recommend you should look at what is acceptable to you from your security posture and make sure your provider gives that. If it's not there, fine tune it, tweak it, even add third-party pieces into it to get you to where you need to be.
Dan, thank you. Carl, I have a question.
Sure.
How different is CRM security compared to non-CRM cloud providers?
You know, it's funny. I think if you think of it as CRM, maybe you're thinking of it kind of narrow, like, oh, we just have some customer information in it. But one, that's the most important data you have as an organization, right? Is your customers. They're
Yes.
giving you information about you need to entrust how you handle it and what you do with it. So I think it's as important. And then CRM, it no longer lives alone. It's not just this thing of sales that sits off on the side. It's your hub of everything you do. You have memberships in there, you have service, you're sending out field technicians, you're doing payments. So the need to have that security in CRM and specifically Salesforce, it's just as great as something like an AWS or Azure, where you have a platform that you're computing on or storing on.
It's a good point. I think that is what I have learned over the years here. When the CRM matured as a sales application, became your business platform to run your business, sales, service, marketing, operations, finance functions. So when you start thinking, when you are integrating your CRM system with all these functionalities, it's no longer CRM as a standalone system. I think it is a cloud platform that you're running. Am I summarizing that right? CRM is not anymore CRM, it's just a business platform. Does anybody disagree with me?
I agree with this statement. It's a very valid statement. It is not just CRM, right? It's a business platform, and there's a lot of things within that business platform. And most of these business platforms traditionally used to be just service, then it became sales, then it became support, then it became billing, then it became marketing. So if you think about it, it is no longer just one platform. It's just expanded to a lot of things.
Very good. Thank you. So let's in the interest of the time, I'm just going to go to the next topic, the need for increased protection. So Sid, actually, I'm going to start with you again. It's a very common sense topic. Hey, we need to protect more. Otherwise, people are going to hack into our areas. But what else do you see that there is a more than ever, there is a need to protect our cloud platform or the whole ecosystem? What's your thought on it?
Sure. So, yeah, that's a great question. We always see that across the board, right? We have been doing enough. What more we can do and why there is a need for it, right? And to answer that, let me put it this way. We see two patterns which are consistent across the industry, which you have listed here too. One is digitization and cybersecurity incidents, right? So, and on the digitization part, you would also see that companies which are born digital, right, like Amazon, they are going back to brick and mortar, right? And organizations which traditionally were brick and mortar, they are going digital, right? And that is required for them to stay relative and competitive in the market. And regardless of which direction your organization is moving and the state of your organization right, whether you are doing digital, becoming digital, or whether you're doing digital, becoming digital, or being digital, right? It is pretty much imminent that every organization, regardless of whether you are being a born digital moving to brick and mortar or being brick and mortar moving to digital, every organization will be developing and deploying a lot more code. Every organization would need to be a software firm, right? They would be deploying a lot more code, and putting that code into the cloud is going to be an obvious choice, right? Because of so many reasons. And when you take this digital journey from doing digital to becoming digital and being digital, the traffic pattern which you today have, right, which is pretty much 75% internal and only 25% is going internet, all of a sudden you would see that it gets inverted, right? You have everything in the cloud, so your traffic becomes 75% internet, and 25% probably stay internally because of your legacy, right? Because you are producing a lot more code, you are consuming it as a service, you go pay per use, you become agile, you want to stay close to your consumer. And so your code and apps are pretty much everywhere, mostly, and my bet is it's mostly going to be not on your on-prem data center, right? So remember, we were talking about this new pattern, the DIA, direct internet access. That has to come in the place, right? You cannot afford to have everybody come to your corporate network, do the traffic sanitization, do all the security checks, and do what? Route them back out. Actually, most of us has better broadband connection than most of the organization's WAN pipes, right? So the user experience won't be better if we won't have the DIA built in. Leave other stuff around, right? And so once you start having your applications code in the cloud, your actual network perimeter-based security, which you today have, the castle and moat design, it's no longer relevant, right? We need to enable the applications to be accessible from anywhere, any device, any time of our user's choice. And which really means that we need to shift that security model, right? Which is why there's a need for increased protection. Because now your data is everywhere. It's no longer confined into a centralized place, which is your corporate network. So the hard perimeter is going away. It's fading away. The traditional network-based security or the castle moat design doesn't work. Our attack surface is getting swollen. It's swollen. It's getting bigger day by day. Our data is getting bigger day by day, and it's everywhere. So we need to build and do security differently. And we need to build a security and do security in everything what we are doing. Because just trusting that network-based or perimeter-based security, which has worked so far great, is not going to be enough, and it's not going to stay relevant, right? Another reason, which, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that makes sense here. Why would you say cloud migration is a reason why we need to protect? Are you saying that during the migration we will lose data, or people can hack into the system? It's a migration is a conveyor belt, right? So you are moving from on-prem to cloud. Why do you say that is an issue?
Sure. So look, right now your data is inside your network perimeter, right? Where you control everything.
Yeah.
Now you do the migration, you start putting data into the cloud, right? And most of the organization wouldn't only have just one cloud, right? They would have Salesforce, they would have Oracle, they're going to have Workday, they're going to have Odaseva, right? So your data is going to be in multiple places now, and which is not in your control anymore, right? When I say not in your control, mostly not in your physical control, right? You don't control it physically, right? It exists everywhere in the public cloud, ideally. And that's why the security model which you have, because right now the model is you need to come to my network, and then the network is open for you to do anything and everything you want. It's the old castle and moat design where the castle is heavily guarded, but once you are in the castle, you can go into any other room, right? But that model is changing. It's already showing the sign of strain, and people need to get away from it and start enabling the orchestration and the security layer, security as service, network as service in the cloud itself. So I'm sitting in my home, I can directly connect to Salesforce, but have the same exact security posture which you had before, right? And so that's one of the reasons.
Yeah, that makes sense here. Sorry to interrupt here. I'm just going to go to Dan at this point in time. Dan, we really got some good input from Sid. What else would you like to add for the reason to increase the protection? So it looks like it's matured, or do you think it's still maturing?
It's evolving. I would like to use the word evolving only because every day there's a new area where we are finding out. When me and Sid used to work together many years ago, Sid, encryption and transit, we gave a thumbs up. that means nothing now. That's baseline. So you on top of that, you put your various log scanners, preemptive data analytics, actionable insights. It just keeps increasing, and I'm very sure the next quarter something new is going to come up. So from the inside out, people may always think, oh yeah, we are secure because we've got all these tools in place. But from a true security person at heart, it's constantly evolving, and it has to evolve because the threats are evolving every day, and we have to keep up with it. So in my opinion, the increased protection is absolutely needed, and it's a never-ending task because the attackers are changing every day.
Yeah, I would add on the attack surface, if you give me a moment, Velu.
Sure,
it's
absolutely.
You know, and you have written this on your slide, cybersecurity incidents, right? So the attacks are actually becoming more sophisticated day by day. And let's look at the stats, right? The Fortune 500 companies, which spend fortune on their security, right? They are being hit by cybersecurity incident, data leakage, ransomware is becoming pretty common. So we know that no organization is safe at this point, right? The cost of the incident is really very high than implementing the security right? Also, the technical controls are really great. The bigger piece, which is not yet great, is the human OS, right? If you see the last 20 years, like if you have taken a Windows OS 20 years ago, install it as it is, I can guarantee you that I could break into that build in less than 3 minutes. Now, after 20 years, Windows has made some significant improvements. I can guarantee you that if you take the default build and you don't change any of the settings and don't let humans touch it, it takes a long time to hack into that system. And if you look at the human OS, we have done very little in 20 years to improve that notion of security, right? And the humans are needed to see what you don't see from your technical controls. So building that security culture and mindset is really, really important. That's really also new for the increased protection.
That's an interesting point. I think Satya Nadella will be very happy to hear the story on Windows, that there is a good protection. Carl, what's your take on the increased protection?
I think I want to take the point about mindset maybe and move into the next slide, Velu, because to me, that's exactly the first place to prepare your organization, right? This isn't a security department thing anymore. Oh, security. Oh, no, that's the security's guy. We don't have to worry about it. They'll take care of it. They'll protect us. It's everyone's responsibility. But unfortunately, it's not on everybody's mind, right? It's not always in your forefront. You're not thinking about decisions around, well, how does this affect security? Are we less secure by doing this? Are we more secure? It's a team effort where you got to encourage all your employees to be that voice of security. And the thing I like to draw out is, let's look at AWS and let's compare it to Salesforce. AWS, I pulled this directly from their site, right? Like, here is our responsibility, security of the cloud. And from a customer's perspective, this is your responsibility, your security in the cloud. And guess what? With Salesforce, it's not any different. You know, Salesforce is controlling the data center and physical access of who goes into a server room and you know, denial of services attacks, but you're responsible for what you configure on top of it. You can go in and you can change that password policy and make it a simple password that never expires. As an admin, you can do that, absolutely. But you've just made your organization a lot less secure. There's a lot of places where Salesforce will give you nudges, right? There's multi-factor authentication coming out. That's going to be enforced next year, where you have to have that additional factor. So even if you have everything perfect inside your org, but somebody gives out their password, well, now they need that device or that second piece. So even though Salesforce isn't as vocal in driving you there, that's still your responsibility that you need to think of. And to help do that, I think it comes to a lot of education and training. And it's not always the same education for everybody inside of your organization. It's not a one size fits all, right? Users need a lot of information about phishing attacks. Like, maybe you run some scenarios where you try and phish and see who will respond to it, and help educate them of what this looks like and having reporting mechanism. You know, your admins a lot about securing Salesforce, securing the CRM. What are the things you can do? Simple things like IP restrictions or multi-factor authentication or transaction security policies where you deny certain things to happen. There's so many of those tools at your disposal. It's a matter of how you use that security in this cloud. And then same thing, developers, secure coding, making sure you're protected against OAuth's top 10, architects designing with security in mind, thinking about how do we build from a least privileged perspective and build up for it. And then over the top, you need that executive presence. You need them to say, yes, security is important. They can't look at it just, oh, this is a cost. Oh, security is going to slow us down. No, it's protecting you. It's protecting you from that bad thing. And sometimes I think, Sid can probably attest to this. It gets a bad rap, right? Like you're like the electric company, everybody's happy, the electric's on, you take it for granted, but boy, the second that you lose power, you're mad at the electric company. Or when something happens with security, like you only see it when something bad happens and you didn't do your job. And I don't think that's fair. Every day where something doesn't happen, somebody did a really hard job. And along those lines, education and training, I've even built some trail mixes. There's a lot of content on Trailhead now, Security 101, 201, 301, where you can learn about, you can educate yourself. So yeah, that's kind of my viewpoint. I think from here, maybe Dan and then Sid, if you have some thoughts to add to that, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I would say you hit it right from the nailhead, right? We all need to be good corporate citizens. Security is a team sport. We all need to play together, right? So we need to consider security in all the decisions we take, and not only build more secure solutions, but also be prepared to break that kill chain, because it's the timing question, right? And the bad guy needs to be right just one time, and you got to be right all the 100% of the time, which is not a equal proportion, right? So the attack is going to come your way. You got to stay prepared to break that kill chain, and not let ransomware call come to you, right? Before that call comes, there's so many things happens. So many things are going to happen, and you got to make sure that you have that kill chain. You know that kill chain, and you are ready to break it, right? So having the right monitoring, having the right, defense and incident management is really important too.
Dan, what's your view on this?
Definitely great points. I think Carl and Sid really hit it on the head, but I would like to put a different tweak on it, right? We are only as strong as the weakest link. So the last point that Carl has, education and training, you can make your cloud as strong as you want, but if your users who go on the cloud are not trained properly to keep it locked down, one admin, one user who did something stupid like clicking on a place where they should not click, or clicked on a spam email that came to them for phishing, that will open up the whole doors all across the board. So the education and training that we talked about is across the board, but also more so for people who have access to the cloud resources. And if they are anybody who has got elevated privileges in the cloud, I would highly recommend them to be sent on a monthly basis some kind of an internal phishing attack to make sure, did Velu get caught in this phishing trap? Did Sid click on this link? And if they start repeating it, put them to some training so they know not to click on this link. Make sure their password is strong. Make sure they're on MFA. All the good stuff that we talked about has to really trickle down to each and everyone who has any elevated privilege in your cloud environment. And I totally agree with what Carl has listed out here. One thing to note though, when we talk about what is in the cloud, your IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, they all have a slightly different flavor of how you do it. But at the end of the day, it's the people who can create a problem internally because of lack of training or not having the right level of maturity when it comes to security.
Hey, I hear you. I think you are also giving, Sid and I work together. You are basically giving some tips to Sid how to put some controls on how I do and what I do. I do have a privileged access. Anyway, which is an important point. I just wanted to share. I was on a call with a senior level leader at the office today. They were asking, why do you need 100% system administrator to run this environment or on ARG? We all know what the ARG is. And I had to spend 30 minutes to educate him what all this person should be doing versus what they are doing today. So the person was still not convinced that you need a full-time administrator to run your org. It is education is the key, and I have especially wherever that I work, make sure that education is not level an admin level, an architect level, executive level. I'm talking about the senior level who really need to understand what is this platform all about. They don't need to know how to do an administration. They need to know the capabilities, what are the bad things people can do with this platform. That is what they should know. And that, I think, it's a process. It's not a one-time education. It is an ongoing education. And if I were to make this one power that I want to get, I want an executive level presence in the trailhead. And I would like them to be doing trial mixes and trailheads just for them to understand the security of the platform, so that it will be easier for people like us to make things happen at the thing. So anyway, it's a strong statement. I think it is important that we want to have executives understand the capabilities of the platform. So let's move on to the next topic. What are the ways to secure? We already touched upon the ways to secure. And so you see this here, all these 4 points. A call, I would like to, as a CTA, I'm sure it was not an easy journey for you to become a CTA if you don't know how to secure the CRM platform, or now it's a cloud platform. Would you like to share your thoughts on how do companies approach or the ways in which to secure, top down or a bottom up approach?
Definitely. And I think you've heard us start to touch on that first one of know thy user. So strong identity and access management. Who is this person that's coming in? Are they being secured with just a password, which I can take and write down on my hand and then show you, or put on the internet? Like, no, having that additional multi-factor authentication. But then you can't forget about the person in that process, right? Like, let's say we access lots and lots and lots of cloud systems, right? And we're not just logging into one cloud system anymore. So if each one has its own password, its own MFA, how many times are you going to your phone to approve? So moving towards a single sign-on, right? Where okay, if you get this, then you can have grants to get to these other systems. And more importantly, if something is compromised, one place where you can go and disable it and disable you everywhere. That's really important, of being able to respond to a threat very quickly with that unified identity and access management. So we start there. Okay, boom. We know who you are. You're able to get in the system. You're accessing what you can. Well, what are you going in this system to do? Primarily, you're going in to deal with data. So you got to have data security. If we think about Salesforce, it's a lot of the initial tools and techniques, org-wide defaults, sharing settings, field settings, who can see what, encrypting fields, but then it can go further, right? You're putting your data in the cloud. Salesforce, to the data center perspective, the disk drive could fall off the back of the truck when it goes somewhere, right? So you're going to encrypt it to make sure with Salesforce Shield that you're protected from that perspective. But then you have to think further, right? Like, okay, what if I need help from Salesforce? Oh, I'm going to grant them login access. Well, now they're coming in as a user and they can see it. So there's also other vectors where you could unintentionally expose data that you need to think through of, is the risk worth the reward, right? Because there's benefits. You need to have support. You need to have help. So sometimes it's a trade-off in evaluating the risk and the threat. And then I think the last piece is you need to have organizational awareness. You need to have visibility into what are some of the security incidents we need to think out. We've linked to Security Advisors, which is a site on Salesforce that talks about some of the more severe security things that you need to be aware of. Not a site that a lot of people necessarily know, but something that's really important. And then likewise, having that executive viewpoint that you heard before, Velu, that you even espoused of these are the metrics, these are reporting, this is how we're going to measure how we're doing on a security perspective and have outcomes tied to it so that everybody is aligned with how you act and behave in a secure manner. So,
no, it's an excellent point, especially the building the visibility. What I have been working on currently and even in my past life, wherever I worked, you first thing when I go into an organization, and Sid and I, in fact, that was our first encounter too when we started. How many system admins you have in your environment? Who are doing what kind of work? The privileged access. So you start from there and you start understanding who has got the most amount of access to your system, and then make sure that the visibility, building the visibility not within your security team, all the way to the top management. Make sure that the visibility is there so they know when the bad incident happens, it happens, the administrators or the people who are doing the hands-on work are not the one going to be affected right away. The top management is the one which is going to get hit, and they are the one going to answer to the stakeholders and so on and so forth. So building the visibility should be not from the only few people, it's all the way to the top. So I want to ask Dan, in terms of data security, you are in a highly data-driven environment. I'm in a data-driven environment. Nowadays, the company is all about data. So when you talk about data security on the cloud, other than putting some controls that Carl talked about, what's your take on protecting the data on the cloud specifically? And if I have to go further down the CRM level.
So tools is one thing, people and process is one thing, but it is a good segue into the next slide where I'm going to talk about, as our dependency increases more and more on all the digital infrastructures and all the multi-cloud, we need to be able to consistently assess our security posture on a continual basis, but be very methodical, be very planful, and very predictive. So we need to know this is going to happen every quarter, and every quarter we are going to do this internal attack surface report through which you'll be able to figure out what the surface looks like. And as we dig into the next slide, Velu, I'll want to go through 5 pillars of what we need to do in any good security audit. It's one thing to get all the tools in place, but we need to do this methodical, repeatable process at least twice a year. And that is where I'll be talking about the security audit components of it. And then once we get something from the security audit, how do we quickly respond to it? Once we find something, there's a problem, what methods do we have? What automated methods do we have to quickly respond to it? Those will be the key things. Lastly, I want to say, wherever we find anything manual that we are doing towards security today, we have to mercilessly automate it, because manual does not scale and human beings will make mistakes.
That's an excellent point. I assume that you are seeing the last slide, right, Dan?
Now I am, yes. So
okay.
Let me jump right into it, right? So ongoing audit and support. So far we've talked about, hey, what are all the things we could do? How do we do it for PaaS, SaaS? Do we bring in X, Y, and Z? Internal tools, cloud native tools, third-party tools, layer them all on top of each other. Everything is good, but then what next? Unless and until we do this regular planned methodical audit of our own environment, we would not know what we have and what we don't. So let me just quickly go through. The first step would be to assess our cloud providers' base security posture. And those things are constantly evolving as well. So you want to make sure that the vendor of choice that we are working with, be it Salesforce, Microsoft, Google, AWS, where are they? Have they added X, Y, and Z? That's the first step to assess what their security posture is and where the gaps were in the last audit versus now. Are we able to plug the gaps by a third party or by ourselves? The continuous monitoring that we are doing of our vendor security posture is going to help us not only on our security posture, but also on compliance and with various cybersecurity frameworks to make sure we're keeping up with what's happening. Second, we want to use the cloud security audit to understand the attack surface. The attack surface is constantly changing. You may have reduced the attack surface 20 or 30 in one place, but suddenly many more would have popped up. But unless you do a proper security audit, you will not understand what your attack surface is. And exposures always exist across your attack surface. Traditionally, your cybersecurity assessment practices can be challenging to scale into the cloud. It makes it very hard to discover and determine what's going on. But bad actors frequently exploit weaknesses that arise when new assets come in, when assets are unmonitored, when they aren't patched. So we need to be aware of that. That was point number 2. Today, the attack surface monitoring technologies evolved considerably, and we have to keep pace with the cloud risk. Let me go to the third one. We have to have very robust access control methods. Carl Brundage talked about it. The access control methods with strong password policies, making multi-factor authentication mandatory. Even if you're in a trusted network, how can we do it? Are you on a trusted device? Are you on a trusted cell phone? If so, so and so. Regularly audit the permissions. Once the permissions are set, I know people like to do it once a year, but once a year is too long. Sometimes you don't need the admin privilege after 3 months, 4 months, or 6 months. So try to constantly re-audit the permissions that people have, especially the elevated ones. Monitor the user's activities as they interact specifically with the cloud assets. That's the fourth main thing, because when you suddenly start seeing some anomaly, you can just put an alert triggered in there through, I know you all use Splunk or some kind of a log management tool. It can easily come up. Make sure that comes up every 15 minutes to find out, why is Sid suddenly logging in from China? Or wait a minute, why is Sid logging in as a CRM admin? But there's no need for it. Things like that could be easily done through the activity monitoring on the cloud asset. Number 4, establish some kind of an external sharing standards. Those standards have to be rock solid, because you will be working with external people. We are not always going to work with internal parties. There are external third parties we work with. What are the standards? We work with Carl. When Carl first came on for Odaseva, I remember going back and forth till Carl's predecessor just pulled his hair out. Perhaps that's the reason why me and Carl lost some of our hair. But we have to work on a standard. How does an external party come in? What can they do? What cannot they do? Are they doing this over a Zoom, or are they going to really log into the system and do it themselves? Those standards have to be there, and we need to evolve and monitor them as well. Lastly, patching smarter. This is not the last, this is the 5th one. You have to patch whatever you could patch, because the cloud is going to patch a lot for you. In our case, Salesforce patches a lot. But if you've got a third party working along with Salesforce, like you got Eloqua here, you got something else, or CPQ, CLM, or whatever you're doing, are your assets there being fully patched, and are you keeping up with the patch cycle? Threats are constantly evolving. So should our security audit evolve along with the threats. That's my number 6. With that, I rest, but I'll jump from the policy aspect right into the executive involvement. At least up to the CIO level, there has to be full buy-in on why we need to secure. And it has to be that at least on a monthly basis, the CIO is giving you the right time and attention to take a look at, these are the top 10 risks. These are the top 20 risks. How are we addressing them? Do we have enough funding? What are the hurdles? How do we get over them? Without that, you will not get the funding, time, or money to remediate the risk that you already know about. In many instances, your security teams know of the top 25 risks, but they don't have the right money, the right resources to get it done. So getting your senior executive, at least at the CIO level, fully engaged, have transparency to the top 25 risks, and give it the right attention to get it resolved is very clear. Last but not the least, Carl talked about data protection. Data is the business. Like people say, what is the core business that you're in? At the end of the day, we are all in the business of data. If our data is gone, the business can shut down. So protecting the data is so key that when we do the audit and we support, the audit is not just on the traditional pieces that we know about. It has to be also on the data components to see if any anomalies have happened there, or things that could be triggering something for us to see who's touching the data, who's accessing the data, who's modifying the data, has anything changed in that aspect. With that, I rest my case. But I'm very passionate about this topic. We can keep on going. Velu gave me the hint of 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Sid, I have 2 questions. One, you as a security consultant, and what keeps on coming to your mind when you go to bed? Okay, oh boy, this has to be done. What keeps you up in the night, or at least when you go to bed? I hope you don't think about security, but if you think about security, what would one thing that we all should take away and we should all be focused?
So, the coin has 2 sides, right? Being in security, you always expect, because you understand security, right? And you think that people who are your users, they understand security too, right? And that is the biggest challenge, to find that right balance, right? That keeps me really up, that how do we simplify the design of the services which we produce, right? So one of my, by far, the favorite speaker in security is Wendy Nather. If you guys haven't heard her, she works for Cisco, then advisory to all the CISOs, right? And one of her examples stuck to me was, how many of us gets a spoon training, right? And does that change when you move from United States to UK or India or anywhere else? And also, if you handle the spoon from the other side, you all of a sudden know this is not the right way, right? And we need to build the security considering our users, right? And their personas and what it means for them, not based on what it means to me as a security personnel, right? And make it so easy for them that they understand that it's important and they can easily consume it, right? So that is one of the things which I always focus on. Whatever I'm building, is it easy for my users, or what it means for the users and personas which are going to use this product, right? That's one of the things. Then another thing
you make us work really hard, Sid. I have to tell you. I know we make it simple, but you make us work. Even the simple mean that you have to work really, really hard, which we do. And
right.
Thank you for bringing that attention. Okay, good. Please
no
go
worries.
ahead.
And then another thing is we need to open that, we need to focus on opening that culture, right? We all talked about security culture and mindset, right? Generally, in general, cybersecurity is seen as, you know, a order giver, right? Let's put it this way. But it cannot be that, right? We can't force security on everyone. It has to be what it means for them and how I can help you achieve that, right? That should be the way. And it has to go from control to collaboration. So people talk about democratizing security, right? Giving that control gracefully to the user, that I have built the security and this is how you can use it, right? And it makes sense to them. Why should I use it?
No, it's an excellent point. I really, I didn't think in that angle because I'm more of an implementer. Now I think as a leader of a team which manages the Salesforce platform, the security culture has to come from every person in the company who uses the cloud platform, which is everybody should have that mindset of, okay, hey, security is not the security team's responsibility, it is everybody's responsibility. I just want to ask this question. I know we have 6 minutes more. Anybody who can answer this, I'm happy to take that answer. The question is, see, we talk about the policies. Policies are set by set of folks. The policies become procedures, procedures become controls, and the controls become processes, and then we implement. The time it takes to define the policies and the time that you implement the procedures and the controls, in my opinion, it's very critical. Policies are set certain time. If it takes 3 years for you to implement, it's too late. So what is your take on how long should it take and what should be the process from creating a policy to the procedures to controls to the process? How long it should be? What is the process that we should all follow as your security advisor, security experts? What would you advise companies who are specifically, let's say CRM, the cloud is a big word, let's say Salesforce. If I have to put a security hat for Salesforce, how long it should take from the top to the bottom, and what is the process that we should follow? Anybody?
I want to jump in and not quite answer your question and leave Dan and Sid the opportunity to answer it. But I think what's important is sometimes we get so caught up in we have to have the process. Like, right. Did you follow the process? But the process isn't really driving results. Like, oh, you need to audit all your users every month. Okay, so we did that. But so what? What do you do with the audit? Somebody look at it. Does it drive behavior? Does it drive an action? Does it drive change? So that's what I would say is, before we go in how we implement it, make sure the focus is on the results and an outcome and driving something different rather than just, here's a process, we check it off the list. So I want to hear from Dan and Sid now on how to make it faster.
Dan, you want to go?
Sure, I can go first. Carl touched upon something very critical, right? Human behavior aspect. Changing human behavior is very difficult. You cannot put policies to change human behavior. I'll give you a quick example. We all get email. We all click on the email. We know that we should not click on certain phishing email. We know if the email is coming from somebody that we do not know, we should not click on it, but we still do. The way that you change that human behavior is if there is a carrot and a stick. In one of the organizations, obviously I don't want to take the names of the organization, we used to send out this phishing email every month that would come from your CRM. It will come from your Salesforce. And there will always be one that is a constantly planned internal phishing email that goes out. And if people clicked on it, a report will be generated saying, you goofed up. Had this been truly a hacker trying to get in and you clicked on it, they would have compromised your machine, thereby you would have compromised the company. And that report started off with 30% of the company was clicking on it. Eventually, it came down to 15% and 10%. But the behavior of the last 10% population could still not be changed. And it included people like the CIO of the company who was still clicking on it because they were mentally trained to click on things. Then it took us to put in a policy to say that if you're clicking on it more than 2 times in a row, your manager, even if you're the CIO, your manager will sit with you along with HR to explain to you how you're jeopardizing this company. It took a carrot and a stick model to change that behavior. Changing behavior is so hard. But Carl, you hit on that point, and I had to give this example. But changing that behavior is important on that aspect. But what can technology do to quickly expedite this process, right? And some of these things, like Carl said, if the end result is what we want to do, like let's say you want to implement multi-factor authentication, make it mandatory. In an organization like yours, Sid and Velu, it takes a long time to go through that policy and the procedure and implement it. But if a senior leader sees that every day that goes by that you do not have the MFA, this is the risk to the organization. And if something happened between today and 3 months from now to get this thing done, if there is a compromise, it's on your head. Guess what? If the onus now sits on the senior leader, that will get expedited quite a bit. I think we have to always evaluate this. What happens if you did not do the security policy for the next 3 months? What is the potential damage? And start quantifying it. That will totally change the mindset of people to make it go faster.
And I would like to get the feedback on Sid so we can close, but I think my question was probably a legacy question, but you guys opened my eyes. It's not about policies, procedures, controls, and the processes. It's about what is the outcome? What is that you need to be doing every day? You don't worry about the policy, don't worry about it. No, I'm not saying don't worry about the policy. Regardless of what the policy says, make sure that as an expert, are you protecting it? Are you making sure that you're doing the right thing and you're plugging the leakage? And then you go back to the update the policies and the procedures, go backwards. Is that what I'm hearing from you, Dan and Carl?
I'm also trying to say what happens if you do not get it done. Let's take the example of implementing multi-factor authentication on your Salesforce today. That is something that you really want to get done. It may take 9 months to get it done here. But what is the cost of not getting it done tomorrow? The cost is you may have an outage. The outage could be in these millions of dollars. It could be this much loss to the business. That should be the top in front and center of the CIO. So they will drive it to happen for you really fast. I'm just saying, when we say this potentially could happen, we have to consider that bad news has already happened and work from there.
What's the cost of inaction? Right? Don't discount that. Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay, so 4 o'clock. So I would like to have a final word from Sid, and then we will close it.
Unmute, Sid. Unmute.
So again, where I would focus is policies are a piece of paper, right? They may be developed. And another thing which I totally understand is usable security is not difficult and doesn't need shiny tools or policies, right? Some of those terms and security stuff, we need to put it in the context. And maybe in another call, I can easily explain that the whole zero trust security, which is booming in the industry, right? I do that every day with my kid, right? When we moved into a Chicago condo, he asked me how safe this condo was. And I asked him like how safe he wanted it to be, right? And when you go to the package delivery guy scenario and talk to them, like how much of access you're going to give him, he would tell you, your kid would tell you, I don't want to give him access to my home because he doesn't need to deliver the package. That is pretty much the least privileged model, right? Do we need policy for it? I don't know, right? That's why I keep going to that simplification of the security. We need to make the design so simple and put it in the context for the user. And then they know, yeah, it is important for me and I should start doing it today.
Thank you, Sid. Really appreciate that. I think so. It looks like it has been. I'm really fascinated about this topic. So we just finished an hour. Can you believe it? We have just done with an hour. Looks like this is not an hour. This should be a 5-day conference on CRM security or a cloud security, which I don't think we all have time for it. And so we have come to the concluding part of this roundtable. First of all, Dan, thank you. Carl, thank you. Sid, thank you for joining. If anyone has any questions who is going to be watching this video, please reach out to people directly. Dan is from TransUnion. He's got a lot of experience with cloud and Salesforce. Carl is our CTA, a very well recognized community, Ohana community member, Salesforce terminology. And Sid is one of the passionate security consultants I've seen. So please reach out to them directly. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. And we are all on LinkedIn, and we are not hiding anywhere. So please reach out to us via LinkedIn, and we will be happy to share. Now this concludes this CRM security roundtable discussion. And please, be safe and stay strong and enjoy your weekend. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Velu.
Thank you, Velu.
Thank you, Sid.
Yeah.
Thanks, Carl. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye.
Sure.